Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today I have one hell of a story for you. This is about a guy. He is it's an email sent from a subscriber. He is in, it sounds like his early to mid 20s. And he's going to share his story, how he grew up in a very terrible childhood bad situation. But ultimately gained a best friend when he was younger, got adopted taken away from his awful family. And he and this bro have been inseparable throughout their childhood, all that. Eventually, as young adults, they went their separate ways, and this guy went in the military, did well for himself, but his brother went down a downward spiral, got into a lot of trouble, and particularly with women. And you're going to see in this story, guys, how this guy comes back, and this guy definitely being R-pilled in so many ways, sees his friend, his life is a complete mess. And how he comes back in and helps save the guy, because you're going to see this guy, his bro here, it was so worn down that he accepted an open relationship and has been completely taken advantage to degrees you guys have yet to see on this channel. But this bro here comes in and helps his friend, and it ends on a very, very high note. And I'm doing this one as another example, guys, to show you how much important it is to have your bros in your life. You can't trade them for anything. That your best friend, and you may just have one best friend in this world that knows you as well as you know yourself, that will always have your back, that is loyal. That is worth all the fucking money in the world. That is better than having one great good friend is better than having 100. And you're going to see here. And you must keep them in your life. And how it's so important, and I talk about this all the time, that guys really do what they can to improve their lives. If they're unhappy, taking action to fix the problems so they can feel good about themselves. Because when guys are worn down and aren't feeling good, they will allow people in their lives to take full advantage of them. And you're going to see in this story, holy mother of God, how that happens to this poor young guy. But also, guys, you're going to see how even a guy can be in the lowest situation in his life, he can get out. But it certainly helps to have someone that cares about you to help you along the way. Because we can all screw up. Okay, I've screwed up plenty of times in life, but I've been able to crawl out and aided with some help, get there along the way. But also, this is going to show why open relationships, open marriages do not work, and how guys will put up with them because out of fear. Fear is the common theme to all these things of losing the girl. Why? Because they think of themselves as shit. But when you build yourself up and you're working hard to become the best you can be, you're feeling so good, you will never allow bullshit in your life, let alone people to take advantage of you. So this is a really good story, guys. This is long. You're going to see right there, 40 minutes. 40 minutes plus. And some of you may be thinking, SSM, this is too fucking long. I'm going over to the other channel, the SSM Clips, which you also joined, by the way. No, this is worth it. You'll definitely will enjoy it. All about a bro helping another bro, a comeback, and a crazy bitch. So, it says, hello, SSM. I've been watching your videos for about 5 months now and have seen some pretty crazy stories, and I've learned a lot and confirmed a lot of my own beliefs. I wanted to share my story in hopes that some other guys might find some value in it. Well, it's really the story of my best friend and brother, but I end up playing a major role in it. Even if this doesn't make it to video, I do want to thank you for your work that you're putting in and getting this information out there, because there are a lot of guys who just don't know. I'll try to keep this story as compact as I can, but there is a lot going on. Yeah, like I said, this is a long story, but it's worth it, guys. Much more I would like to be able to write in the story. I need to give a little bit of a background here. I'm not looking for sympathy, and I love my life, but it's important to understand why I think the way I do. So now he's going to go through his background here in his life, which then will catch up with things going on in the present. It says here, I didn't have the best childhood in the beginning. I never knew my dad, so it was just my mom and me. We lived on the poor side of town until I was in the 2nd grade. I thought that my experience was how most families lived. I didn't understand at the time, but my mom was not a very good mother, and she was a drug addict. I'm not going to get into the details of what drugs, but there were always used needles laying around the apartment. Oh my God. I'm sorry, man. It wasn't uncommon for me to be at home alone several days in a row, and if not for school lunches, I probably would have starved to death. The weekends were the worst. Again, I'm not looking for sympathy. That was just the life I knew. Bro, that I'm sure hardened you for life. It's such a shame that any kid is raised in that environment. Every now and then, one of my mom's boyfriends would live with us for a few weeks or months at a time, and when that happened, I did my best to stay in my room because more than one of them seemed to enjoy beating me, and my mom didn't seem to mind. Like I said, it was just the life I knew. I thought that everybody lived like that. I was usually a fairly quiet kid, mostly out of reflex. When you get hit for random things, you learn to keep quiet and keep your mouth shut, as well as doing your best to stay as invisible as possible. It was when I was in the second grade that my entire life changed. I made my first real friend. We'll call him Reggie. He was a lot like me, quiet and spent lots of time sitting alone and not talking to the other kids very much. I don't even remember how we ended up talking to each other, but it wasn't long before we were spending most of our time together at school. It was when he asked me if I wanted to spend time at night at his house so we could play video games that I learned that my life was far from normal. All that time, this kid really had no friends. He was that messed up. This stuff could affect people for life, guys. But the fact that, well, you're going to see this guy, events happen, help him turn things around. It's great. I asked my mom if it was okay, and she either didn't care or didn't see a problem with me being out of the apartment. But she said I could. It was on a Friday that I took the bus home with Reggie, and I can still remember being a little shocked that his apartment was nice and clean. But what was more shocking to me was how his mom, Barbara, treated me and treated him when we got there. She hugged him and asked about his day at school, and she welcomed me in their home and told us to have fun, and she would call us when dinner was ready. I know for most people, that doesn't sound like anything out of the ordinary, but when you're never been treated that way, it was strange to see. This is why when kids are raised in a household where mom and dad hate each other's guts, they're staying in the marriage for the kids, but there's no love there and all that, these kids are going to think that's how life is, and eventually they'll seek out partners, husbands or wives, that treat them the same way. And the vicious cycle continues. This is why I always say, mom and dad are miserable, there's no love there, break up, divorce. Don't stay in it for the kids and raise the kids in a household, or they're going to think that's how life is. He thinks his shitty situation, it is terrible, it's how life really was. And then he saw it wasn't that way. Right here. After that weekend, it wasn't out of the ordinary for me to spend a few days at Reggie's house, and we become best friends. My mom didn't mind that I was spending so much time away from home. Over time, I found that Reggie's dad was a Marine, and he had died in combat. He also has a younger sister, Kelly, who spent a lot of time playing with us. Fast forward about 4 months, and I can't remember what I was doing. My mom had one of her boyfriends over, and they were both drinking. I accidentally bumped the table, and his beer was sitting on and knocked it over. He hit me pretty bad, and while my mom was yelling at me to clean up the mess I made. I didn't really think much about it because it wasn't uncommon. Those people deserve life in fucking prison. In fact, they deserve way worse. I just can't say here on this channel, but you guys can use your imagination what I'm thinking. Total scumbags. Poor kid. It was a few days later when I was visiting Reggie that everything changed. His mom saw the bruises on me when I was getting ready to take a bath, and until the day I die, I'll never forget the look of horror she had in her face. She asked me what happened, so I told her. She didn't say anything other than telling me to finish my bath and go to bed. I didn't think anything of it. About a month later, the police showed up at our apartment with a lady, and I found out it was from Child Protective Services, and they took my mom into custody, and I left with the lady. Thank the Lord. Lock your mom away and throw away the key. I had no idea what was going on until a week later when I found that Barbara had turned my mom in for abuse and had also got my mom to agree to sign over legal guardianship for me until I was 18 years old. My life at that point got drastically better, and I'm sorry it took so long to explain it, but it is important. Without embellishment, Barbara is one of the 3 people on the planet I would die or kill for. All she has to do is ask, and if it's in my power of hers, no questions asked. Well, your friend's mom is a saint. What a good woman. Which goes to show you guys, there are some good women out there. It's rare, but there are good ones. Over the next year and a half, I think I saw my mom 3 more times with supervised visits, and then at some point she just stopped coming over. After all that, what do you mean supervised? There shouldn't be any visits. Good Lord. It took me a while to get used to the new life that I was living, and Barbara showed me more love and attention in that time than my mom had ever in my entire life. By the time Reggie and I were in high school, and after a lot of therapy, my life was going great. Barbara treated me like her own son and loved the family I had. I knew it wasn't easy taking on another kid, and maybe someday I'll ask her why she did it. But she never left any doubt in my mind that I was loved unconditionally. Bro, that is awesome. This is a good story here, starting off for the holidays here. Everybody likes a good story during the holidays. At least is realistic. You got a new family, new mom, a brother. That's awesome. Which is going to explain more where things go because of that. He says, Reggie was still a pretty shy guy and always seemed unsure of himself around girls. I didn't know why. He was a good-looking guy, but from his own mouth, he was a proud nerd. I was a lot more outgoing and enjoyed working out and sports. It was like pulling teeth to get Reggie to come out with me, to hang out with friends, and I still can remember when he found his first girlfriend. She was pretty, but she treated him like crap. He was like her personal fan club, and it didn't matter how many times I told him that she was taking advantage of him, he didn't care. She ended up dumping him after a few months for another guy at school, and he spent the rest of the time in high school depressed and alone. He was embarrassed at how she humiliated him and stopped going out with me to hang out. We've all known that guy, right, guys? In fact, some of us may have been that guy at some point. And that guy needs to get out. He needs to hang out with his bros and start doing things instead of being locked away and being depressed all the time and listening to sappy music on the freaking radio. After graduation, I ended up going into the Navy, and even though Barbara wanted to help pay for college, she had done way more for me than she should have, and I didn't want to be any more of a burden on her than I had been. I figured I could go to the military, learn a trade, and get money for college on the GI Bill, so that's what I did. That's great that you were thoughtful of her. Over the next 4 years, I was busy with my job and was having a great time. Barbara called me every week when I wasn't deployed, but the communication with Reggie had started to taper off about a year. I figured he was getting his own life in order, and Barbara never said he was having any problems. But after I'd been in for a little more than 2 years, she told me that he had a new girlfriend and was spending most of his time with her. Remember, this is the guy that was totally pee-whipped in his previous relationship in high school, and obviously treated like the queen and all that. One of these guys. It was a few months before it was time for my enlistment to be over that Barbara called to let me know that the woman that gave birth to me died for drug overdose. The way I see it, that's one less asshole in the world. She can burn in fucking hell. And if that offends you, brother, who wrote this in, I'm sorry, but in my opinion, she can burn in fucking hell. And all her boyfriends that were along with her mistreating you. It was like reading some tragedy in the newspaper. I didn't feel sad or happy. I was just something that happened to someone I had no connection with. Barbara said how sorry she was that my mom died, and I told her I knew who my mom was, and it wasn't the lady that died. I knew that I was only going to do one enlistment, and other than buying a used car and paying for insurance, I put almost all my money away into savings and investments, so I'd be able to get my life in order when I got out. Good for you, brother. Live cheap, put all your money away, save it and invest it. Good for you. Living in the barracks and eating at the galley, I could literally live on $20 to $30 a month. I was 23 years old when I separated from service and went home. When I made it to Barbara's place, she and Kelly were there, but Reggie was not. I guess I was a little disappointed, but had a nice reunion while we all caught up. I asked about Reggie, and Barbara frowned and told me that he rarely came to visit, and she didn't like the girl he was seeing. Kelly didn't seem very impressed with her either, but the only reason they had was that Reggie always seemed sad. I knew he had been for her at least 2 years at that point, and I figured I would catch up with him the following day. I found out that he normally got off work around 6 p.m., so I decided to go see him and maybe go out for dinner and catch up. It had been nearly 2 years since the last time we talked, and I wanted to find out what had been going on in his life. Holy shit, you haven't talked to your bro for 2 years? And obviously you were deployed and all that. I mean, we can all communicate. People can communicate when they're deployed, I know, but still, you weren't around. But obviously he had a lot of shit going on. Now that's the end of his background part. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the story here. He says here, it was the day after I returned home to Barbara's house that I got the chance to see my brother and best friend for the first time in nearly 4 years. For most of the day, Barbara and I sat around while I told her about the places I'd been to and some of the experiences I had while I was away. I also spent some time putting in resumes. It was during our day together that Barbara told me that she only saw Reggie about once a month, and even then it was for short periods of time. Apparently, his girlfriend, Ashley, was pretty controlling and didn't like him spending so much time around friends and family, and to make her happy, he stopped. Smack! You do not let some girl run your life. You, as a man, determine your life. And you want to see friends and family, or go to the gym, or enjoy your hobbies, you do that. The problem is guys that are weak and don't think much of themselves will take any girl they can get, and they think in their warped minds that her controlling me means she loves me. No woman is going to love or respect a man that she can control. None. And for those of you who watched me for a while and heard all the stories I cover, you know what I'm talking about. It says here, I guess that explained why his phone calls tapered off and eventually stopped while I was away. Even without meeting her, I didn't have a very high opinion on Ashley, but I love my brother and was going to give her a chance. Well, wait till you see what happens when he meets good old Ashley. I made it to Reggie's apartment about 7 p.m., and after knocking on the door, a pretty strawberry blonde, whom I assumed was Ashley, opened the door. I asked if Reggie was there, and she said that he was and invited me in after asking who I was. When she closed the door, I told her my name, and her eyes lit up, and she wrapped me in a hug that, in my opinion, lingered a little too long before she led me into the kitchen. Pay attention to red flags, gentlemen. You're going to see what I'm talking about here. While going into the kitchen, I noticed another guy sitting in the living room, playing a game on the TV. There was my brother cooking dinner. As soon as he heard us walk in, he turned around and looked at me a little shocked, and then he gave me a giant smile before rushing over and wrapped me in a bro hug. When we parted, I was a bit taken back at his appearance. Reggie had always been a shy guy, but there was a certain innocence to him, and his eyes had always been bright and full of life. The man I was looking at now looked like he'd just gotten off a 24-hour work shift. He had dark bags under his eyes, and he put on a little weight, but looked like he'd been dragged to a river and hung up wet. He wasn't out of shape, he just seemed, I'm not sure how to describe it, I think worn out is the most appropriate. Yeah. Extra pounds, probably hasn't shaved in a week, tired, worn, yeah, I can picture that. And who do you think is causing him, well, at the end of the day, he's allowing himself to, let's be honest, personal responsibility. He's allowing himself to get that way, but who's the cause in a lot of this? He introduced me to Ashley and me to her. When she sat next to me and caught me a little off guard, but at the time I didn't think much of it. As soon as he introduced me, I'm not sure if it was the look in her eyes or the words out of her mouth, but I had a bad feeling about her. Trust your gut. She said that it was nice to finally meet me and jokingly chastised Reggie for not telling her how handsome I was. It made me feel uncomfortable, and I saw Reggie frown for a fraction of a second. I decided to accept the compliment as just someone being polite and thanked her, and wrapping my brother in another hug and whispered to him how much I missed him and we wanted to catch up. When we parted again, he was smiling at me and said he needed to finish dinner, but we could talk for a while and go for a walk while he was done. I sat down at the kitchen table, waiting for Reggie to finish what he was doing, and Ashley sat across from me and started asking me about where I'd been and said how much Reggie talked about me. I asked how long they'd been dating, and she was quite the social butterfly. Of course, she's a social butterfly, and we'll come back to that. She told me how they met and how cute she thought he was and how she loved how bashful he was when they first met. Reggie added some details, but there was something off between his words and his body language. I think the statistic is 80% of all communication is body language. So somebody could be saying something, but if their body language says something else, pay attention to the body language. 80% I think is body language. Another 10 to 15% is tone of voice, something like that. Very little is what's actually being said in communication. Then Ashley asked if I was married or had a girlfriend, and I told her that I wasn't, but I had time for that when I got my job situation sorted out. We talked for about 10 minutes before she got up telling me how happy she was to meet me, before she hugged Reggie and left the kitchen. When he finished cooking, he asked if I was hungry, but I told him that I would like to get out of the house so we could catch up. He ended up making 2 plates of food and taking it in the living room when I found Ashley sitting next to the guy that was playing video games, and in my mind, she was sitting entirely too close to him. So, again, let's remember this scene here. He comes to the house, she answers the door, it's a little flirtatious. There's some dude sitting there who hasn't talked to him yet, playing video games, and his bro here's in the kitchen looking exhausted and worn out cooking for them. What gives? Why isn't she helping cook? Why is she on the couch with some dude here? Well, you'll see. And by the way, guys, this story is another example of what happens when a man is so worn down and doesn't think so highly of himself, what he'll allow in his life. Why it's so important. You guys must work on yourselves to build yourself to be the best you can be. And then no one will take advantage of you. And if they do, because people always will try, you won't fall into their trap. And you cut them out of your life. But when you think you're shit and you're garbage and not worth anything, you allow yourself to be taken advantage of. And we'll get more into that. I had no idea what was going on, but I had alarm bells ringing in my head. Initially, I assumed it was a relative of hers. a relative that she might call Daddy. He put a plate for each of them on the coffee table and told Ashley that they were going out for a little while, and she asked him if he wanted her to come along, but he said, and she asked him if he wanted her to come along, but he said we were just going to be catching up. She didn't look very happy about that, but smiled and told us to have fun before telling me that she hopes I'll come over again so we can get to know each other better. Reggie frowned again, but I told her that we would see each other again since she was my brother's girl, and we headed out. It wasn't until we left his apartment that it occurred to me that nobody had introduced me to the other guy. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you guys have been wondering the whole time for the last 10 minutes, who's this guy sitting on the couch? And who's this guy who's being left in the apartment while he and his bro here go for a walk? All right? We decided to take a walk around the neighborhood so we could catch up a little, and it was nice to finally be back with the first friend I ever had. I'm not sure it's because I hadn't talked in such a long time or if there was something else on his mind, but we must have walked in silence for about 10 minutes before I told him I was a little disappointed that he wasn't at his mom's house the previous day when I got in. He said he was sorry but busy with work. I get it. You can't control your work schedule. I told him it was fine, and now that I was back, we would have plenty of time to catch up with each other. We walked in silence for a few more minutes, but I knew there was something on his mind. You don't spend so much time with someone as I did and not be able to read their body language. We've been best friends since we were nearly 8 years old, and aside from the 4 years I was gone in the Navy, I knew him well as I knew myself. We ended up at a little park that was in the neighborhood, sitting on the swing sets while I caught him up with my life over the last few years, and he seemed interested to hear about some of the places I had a chance to visit. It was nice to be home for the first time in a very long time. I felt like it was where I was supposed to be. It was about an hour into our conversation that I asked who the guy was at his apartment that was playing video games. I can't believe it took you that long to ask. That'd be the first freaking question out of my mouth the second that you closed the door. Who the fuck is that on the couch with your girlfriend? But okay. Reggie paused for a minute but said his name was Brad. He says, not his real name. I asked him who he was, and he said he was one of Ashley's friends. Friends, huh? I thought that was kind of strange, but being back in town one day, I didn't press the issue. We ended up talking about our lives for about 2 hours before I wanted to walk back to the apartment with him, before saying goodnight and making plans to meet up again. I didn't know what it was, but my brother seemed like a shadow of the guy I used to know. But after being gone for 4 years, I accept that some people can change. Or accept that sometimes people change. Over the next month, I went on several job interviews and ended up landing a job doing basically what I did in the military. I stayed with Barbara for about 3 weeks before I got my own apartment, and with her and Kelly's help, I got my new place set up. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not an interior decorator. If not for Barbara and Kelly, my apartment would probably look like a prison cell. Between getting my apartment set up, starting my new job, and getting used to being in a civilian again, I only saw Reggie a couple times, and both of them were over the dinner at his mom's house. He never brought Ashley with him, which I thought was strange, but I didn't question it. It was clear that Barb didn't like her very much. Well, if Barb, who is essentially your mom, don't like her, that'll tell you everything you need to know. Because Barb is one of the few women out there that is really a good, decent, kind person, and so that says everything. And this added to this guy's gut feelings when he met that crazy girl. And you're going to see why real quick. It says, I couldn't get over how worn out Reggie looked, and the happy-go-lucky guy I used to know wasn't there anymore. Even when he smiled, it looked like it was forced. I knew something was going on in his life and wanted a chance to talk to him and find out what it was. I know it had been gone for a few years, but it was such a drastic change in his personality that he seemed like a completely different person. And this guy, his brother, would know. It was a few weeks after that last dinner at Barbara's house that I found out what was going on, and it wasn't pretty. It was a Friday after work, and I decided to stop by his place around 8 p.m. to see if he wanted to go out and shoot some pool and catch up some more. What I really wanted to do was find out what was wrong with my brother. When I made it to his apartment and knocked on the door, he answered and let me in. Ashley and Brad, Big Brad, were watching something on TV and again sitting way too close to each other for my comfort. Why the hell is this dude always there? Does this guy not have his own place? I said hello to everyone before asking Reggie if he wanted to go out for a little bit. As soon as I asked, Ashley was on her feet and joined our conversation and asked if she could tag along. I told her maybe next time, and I wasn't trying to be rude, but I wanted to catch up with my brother a little bit more, but promised we would take her along another time. She didn't seem very happy and asked me to not keep him out too late before she joined Brad on the couch. Reggie went into his room to change his clothes while I waited for him. I'm not sure Brad was stupid or suicidal, but as soon as Reggie was out of the room, he leaned over and gave Ashley a kiss, and she seemed to be enjoying it, and neither of them seemed to care that I was standing 5 feet away from them. I lost my shit. What? He just starts making out with her right there, and she makes out with him right back. Now you can see why the mother doesn't like him, or her, and why Reggie's so miserable. We're just getting started, guys. I was yelling, "What the F are you doing?" and closed the distance to the couch and snatched Brad by his hair and dragged him over the couch. Ashley was yelling. Brad was freaking out, and Reggie made it down to the hallway just before I was about to beat the crap out of that dude and yelled for me to stop. I was confused, and Ashley was screaming at me while Reggie basically dragged me out of the apartment. I was furious and really wanted to go back in and have some personal time with Brad. But Reggie was shaking me, trying to get me to calm down, and said I didn't understand. Didn't understand what? What was there to understand? His girl was making out with a friend, and while he was in the next room. It took me a couple minutes to calm down a little bit, and Reggie said that he could explain. We ended up getting in his car and drove to a park that we hanged out when we were kids, and he told me a story that was hard to even comprehend. Apparently, he and Ashley were in a, wait for it guys, drum roll, open relationship. Another guy that is worn down, doesn't think much of himself, accepting shitty terms. And an a-hole girl more than happy to take advantage of him and that situation. But it was worse than that. He spent some time telling me how they met and dated for 9 months. When she moved in, smack. He let her move in after 9 months of dating her. And obviously the more smacks for being an open relationship and going along with it. And didn't mind that she didn't have a job. Smack. So he has to pay all the bills? What a convenient deal for her. After they'd been dating for about a year, she started complaining they didn't spend enough time with her, mostly because he'd been working 8 to 10 hours a day, and asked if it was okay for her to invite a friend over when he wasn't home. He's working 8 to 10 hours a day to pay for her ass, and she's complaining he's not enough time to pay attention to her. Oh, we're just getting started. He agreed to it. Smack. You shouldn't allow your girl to be hanging out with some other dude, let alone your own house. He agreed to it, and she promised he didn't have anything to worry about. It was about 2 months later when he walked in and found them making out on the couch. Well, history repeats itself. He said he was pissed, and after Brad left, she sat him down and told him how much she loved him and wanted to build a life with him. But he needed to be more open-minded with their relationship, and that if he couldn't accept that, then she needs to be the needs if he couldn't accept that she has needs that he wasn't providing, that she couldn't stay in the relationship with him. Reggie told me how his heart was broken, but after thinking about it for a couple of days, he agreed to the open relationship because he didn't want to lose her, and she promised that it wasn't emotional with Brad. Smack, smack, smack. I should add a few more, but my hand's getting sore from smacking this dude. What the hell? Well, we all know what's going on here. This guy, and I'm sure he's a good guy deep down, is so worn out, thinks so low of himself, that he's accepting shitty terms, and this succubus, this harpy, came into his life, because we attract people into our lives, guys. We put an energy out in the world. It's taking full advantage of it. What a great deal for her. I want to be with you. You're the one I love, but I can't be with you. My needs aren't being met, so I need to hook up with Big Brad here. And this guy takes it. This is why a guy needs a bro in his life to smack the hell out of him when he's acting like a bonehead. But we're not done yet, guys. It gets worse. It says here, Reggie told me how his heart was broken. I went on to that. After that day, Brad would be at the apartment when he got home, but would eventually leave after Ashley was treating him better than she had ever been before. So he decided to give it a chance. It was about 4 months prior when Ashley sat him down again and said that Brad had lost his job and couldn't afford his apartment, and she asked if he could stay with him for a little while until he got on his feet, and Reggie stupidly agreed. Smack, smack, smack. I'm thinking the scene right now. I'm trying to imagine all you guys listening to this right now. Intermission. I'm trying to imagine all you guys listening to this story right now. And you guys must be just screaming out loud. Bros are screaming out loud at the TV or your phone all around the world. It's like in Star Wars when they blew up Alderaan. You know what I'm talking about for you Star Wars people? And Luke said there's something wrong. And he said there was a great disturbance in the Force. As if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and suddenly silence. That's what this is like, this moment here. Jesus H. Christ, bro, this story. I mean, I can say what the hell's wrong with your friend, but I know what's wrong with him. But don't worry, guys. Don't leave yet. Things will get better. Now, 4 months later, he'd been working himself to death to cover the expenses for both Ashley and Brad, including coming home to cook dinner for all three of them, and Ashley splits her time between the two of them. Oh, how nice. Ashley's giving him some time. They're living there, rent-free. He's paying all the bills. That dude's boning his girlfriend. He comes home and cooks dinner for them. That guy's on his couch. You can't tell me that guy can't get a job? There are people in this world that will take full advantage of you, gentlemen, unless you don't draw some boundaries. I need to start like SSM camp someplace and take the most worn-out, weak guys to come there and pay an admission, and I whip them into shape over the course of a month. That's it. I need to buy some land and start SSM camp to help guys get their shit. This guy needs SSM camp. But right now you can watch my videos. When he finished telling me that last part, he broke down crying uncontrollably while I sat there in complete shock. How the hell did my brother get himself in such a fucked up situation? And more importantly, why the hell was he putting up with it now? I don't think I've ever been that angry in my life, and as much as I'm ashamed to admit it, I yanked him to his feet and beat his ass. Well, you know what? You needed it. Now I don't have to do it. I don't remember everything I yelled at him, but I was disgusted at the person he'd become. You Godfather fans, remember the scene in the first Godfather at the wedding? And Johnny Fontaine sitting on the couch with the Godfather whining because he can't get that part in that movie. And finally the Godfather jumps up, grabs him by the shirt, and says, "You can act like a man," and smacks him in the face. Right here. After the emotions tamed down, we both sat in the grass, not saying anything for a little while. Eventually, I apologized for hitting him, but I told him that he had to do something. For the first time since I got home, I saw a glimmer of the guy that I used to know, and he, nearly begging, asked me what was he supposed to do. No begging, but this guy's in need, so remember what this guy's mother did for him, so he's going to help his brother here, and of course he loves his brother. One thing I learned as a technician in the Navy was that when you take care of the small problems, the big problems go away by themselves. Ashley and Brad were small problems. I told him that we were going back to his place and kicking them out right now, and warned him that he even thought about giving her a second chance, I was going to beat his ass again. Good, bro, because if you that gets to that point, I'm going to fly down and find Reggie and beat his ass too. Reggie had never been the most confrontational person in the world. Really? But I had never known him to be this weak. The entire drive back to his place, he kept asking me if I was sure this was the right thing to do, and he had asked for the 5th or 6th time. I told him that if you don't take care of this right now, don't ever talk to me again, because no brother of mine can be this much of a pussy. Yes, some tough love, Migo. The rest of the drive was in silence, and when he made it back to the apartment, it took him a few minutes to just staring at the door before he opened it up and walked in. I don't think he was 2 steps in the door before Ashley was screaming at him, telling him that she never wanted me in their apartment again. Gee, I wonder why. Well, she won't have to worry about that for very long. At first, Reggie didn't say anything, and she kept on yelling. That only lasted for a few minutes before he yelled at her to shut up. Hey. I'm not sure if he ever talked to her like that before, but it seemed to shock her enough to close her mouth. Look what happens when a man actually acts like a fucking man. He told her, "We're done and you need to leave." I don't think his words made any sense, but it didn't take very long for her to start shouting at him again, and I had enough. I walked past both of them and saw Brad sitting on the couch watching everything. I pointed at him and told him he had 10 minutes to get his shit out and leave, or one of us was going to go to the hospital. As soon as I said it, Ashley turned on me and started screaming at me. But I told her to shut up and get her shit and leave. She tried to argue that she wasn't going anywhere, but Reggie finally found his spine and yelled at her to shut up, pack her shit and get out, or he was going to call the police and have her removed. Well, I want to know, I'm assuming she's obviously not on the lease, but I have to wonder if she's been living there long enough if she has some rights. Just a fair question here, but deal with that later. Get him out. That was when the tears started, and she half pleaded with him that she didn't have anywhere else to go, and half cussing at me. Not my problem, honey. If you're a young, pretty girl, I'm sure you can find some other dude to shack up with. I just started laughing, and that seemed to give Reggie a little more confidence, and he held his ground. I looked back at the couch, and Brad hadn't moved a muscle. I told him, you now have 7 minutes left. You might want to make good use of them. He finally got off the couch, but not before telling Reggie how effed up this was. This is effed up. You've all been freeloading for a long time here, and this is effed up. I guess he went to the room that he was staying in, but I'm not sure. Ashley was still making a fuss, but ended up storming down the hallway, and Reggie's face had gone pale. I wrapped him in a hug and told him he was doing the right thing, and we waited in the living room for them to get their stuff. It took them a bit longer than 10 minutes, and in that time, I guess one of the neighbors called the police because of all the yelling. What would a story be here without the police showing up? It took Reggie a few minutes to explain that he was kicking Ashley and her boyfriend out, and the officer asked if she was on the lease. Reggie went to the desk and pulled out the lease agreement and showed the police officer and said that all the bills were in his name. He told him that they didn't have any claim to the apartment and they were now trespassing, but he wasn't giving them time to gather their things. We ended up waiting for almost half an hour before Ashley came down the hallway. She was screaming at Reggie, but as soon as she saw the cops, she started yelling at Reggie. Reggie was hitting her. Nobody here is surprised. The officer looked at Reggie, and his cheek was pretty swollen from where I hit him, and he looked at Ashley, who, other than having a red face from crying, didn't look like she was hurt, and asked Reggie, and I had to step aside while telling Ashley to calm down, and he backed in to talk to her. It took about 15 minutes for Reggie to explain what was going on, and the cop looked almost as shocked as I was, before he went into the apartment to talk to Ashley. That took a little while longer. In the end, the officer escorted both of them out of Reggie's apartment, with Ashley still screaming at him while she put her stuff in the car and drove away with Brad. The officer had Reggie file a report just in case. She made a claim and suggesting filing for a restraining order before he left. You're damn right. Mega restraining order. It was a crazy night. That's an understatement. And of course, she didn't let it go. She harassed him for a couple more weeks, spread a bunch of lies about him on social media, and keyed his car, which we found out from the camera thing on his doorbell. I told him to report her for vandalism, but he said he just wanted her to go away. No. She ain't going to go away. You report that. He ended up getting a restraining order, but didn't file charges for keying the car. I told him it was a mistake, but it was his to make. So that was December 2019, and it took about 6 months, but life returned to normal. He still hasn't bothered with any more relationships, and I think she might have given him PTSD. But it's nice having my brothers back. When we told Barbara what happened, she was really pissed at Reggie for letting Ashley treat him that way and not saying anything to her about what was going on. And Kelly said if she ever saw her again, she was going to claw her eyes out. It's funny. His sister is a lot more feisty than he is. Anyway, SSM, I'm sorry this story is so long, but that was my brother's experience with an open relationship. But it was him being a complete doormat that created most of the problems. Yes, that generally creates pretty much all the problems. We've been watching a lot of your videos together, and he's completely ashamed at how weak he was. Thank you for the work you do, SSM. Every man has a spine, but there are some that just don't know how to use it. The message you put out there is important. God damn, dude, that was one hell of a story. And don't worry about being long. I'm sure the brothers out there will be more than happy, and the 4% of the sisters out there will be happy to listen to this tale. Thank God for you. That's all I'm going to say. But you know what? You've both been helping each other out throughout your lives. Now to Reggie, my brother Reggie. I know you know. I don't need to say any more, but I know you know what I'm thinking, what I think I'm going to say. And if you're watching my channel, you know. Take it day by day. Get your life together. Okay? Reggie, I want you to focus on your grind. I want you to focus on your purpose. If you don't know what your purpose is, figure it out. I want you to get some exercise. Go to a gym. Get in shape. Okay? And he said you were gaining some weight. Weren't looking good. Planet Fitness, $10 a month. I know I'm not a stockholder of Planet Fitness. I'm just picking a cheap option. Almost every town is a Planet Fitness or something equivalent. Join a gym. Start working out, all that. At your job, when you start becoming the best you can be at your job. Putting away money, saving money, and start watching videos like mine, other channels, building yourself up to be the best you can be. And I want you to really dig deep inside of you as to why you allowed this girl and other girlfriend in high school to treat you this way. What is it? Is it the need for approval? Is it the need for love? Is it affection that you allowed this shit to happen? Okay, we can all make mistakes, but you can't make them again. You were lucky that this guy came along and literally beat some sense into you, and you needed it, because believe me, I was going to find you and slap you around. And I'm not joking about that SSM camp, but bro, don't ever let this bullshit happen again. And going forward, you keep your bro here. He's now back. You guys got to stay close like this. You both can help each other out through your lives. And I'm hoping, great hope for you, that by watching my channel and other channels like mine, you will improve yourself a little bit every day. And this shit will never happen again. And if that crazy bitch comes back into your life, you know what to do with her. But bro, it was a great story, and it definitely entertaining. Shows guys what not to do. And again, guys, remember, this is why I just hammer it in all the time about self-improvement, about your purpose, your grind. When you are working on yourself, even if you have ways to go, you got to lose 200 pounds, you're working minimum wage. If you're working towards improving yourself, even if it takes you a while to get there, you will feel better every day. And the more you're feeling better about yourself, the less bullshit you'll allow in your life. Because there are people, just like in this story, that will come in and will take you for everything it's worth. And they don't care. They are scumbags. That girl, Ashley, here's her name, fucking parasite. And that dude, another parasite. Okay? That should never have happened. But that's we don't need to focus on that at this point. You know. So, bro, I wish you all the best. And again, to the dude telling this story, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you. You had a hell of a... I'm so sorry about your childhood and all the shit you went through, but thank God for Barbara and your bro here that took you out of that. And you're doing great, okay? You are a savior to your brother here. And your story will... A lot of guys out there are going to be cheering you on for what you did. And just for you, keep focusing on what you're doing. I'm glad you're putting away money early, investing it in the right places that you're comfortable with. In spite of the financial markets right now, everything will be okay. And just keep on trucking. You're going to be great. So I want to hear how Reggie's doing in 6 months to a year. Okay, so bro, write in 6 to 12 months how you guys are doing. This is a great story. I think this will do well. All right, guys, that is it for today. Thanks for sticking in. This is close to 40-minute video. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Let this guy know what you think. Let the bro writing in give him some praise for writing this in. If you need to give some verbal smacks to Reggie, he deserves it, but he also give some encouragement for him moving on. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.